If you are new here, my name is Michele Paiva, and you're about to watch a webinar that I conducted recently on the topic of isolation.
Hey everyone, how are you? So I just want to make sure that you can hear me. I think I'm going to have to put this a little bit louder. Okay, so today there might be one or two people popping on, but right now what I want to do is just talk to you about isolation. So let's start from the beginning. Most people right now are experiencing some form of isolation, even though you might be with families or wherever. Maybe you're in sort of a community where you're very close to each other. If you go out on a balcony, anything like that, you are probably still experiencing some form of isolation. And right now it's still a novelty for many people that are listening to this. So if you're in the United States, North America, it's more of a novelty. We're just a few days into it. And if you look at some social networking, you would think it's just overwhelming to some people, even a couple of days into it. Okay. Now, I want you to think about that there are some people that live like this all of the time. And I wrote down some statistics that I wanted to share with you. 28% of people 65 and older are living in isolation like we are right now, all of the time. There's no one to talk to. There's no one to interact with. Some of the people that are 65 and older are not very computer savvy. They didn't grow up with it. They were just kind of missing that cusp of computers being the normal thing. Okay, so they're very much more isolated. This is where it gets even scarier. Once you hit 70 to 75 years old right now, in this day and age, 70 to 75 years old, you have a 50% chance of feeling as isolated as we do right now. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of not only are some of the people who are isolated right now because of COVID-19, because of what we're going through with trying to stay safe and healthy, but some people are also have been going through this for years. So this to them is just another level of isolation. Okay. So for some of these older people, just going to the grocery store was all they had. So just talking to the person at checkout, just talking to the stock person, that's all they had. And now that's pretty much taken away from them. So I want to just put that out there right now. If you have anyone that's near you that is older and you are thinking in those terms, really try to figure out if there's a way that you can, of course you can't maybe visit them, but maybe you can call them on the telephone and just at least start some interaction with them. Now that's out of the way, let's just talk about isolation and what are some of the benefits of isolation. So I know I've been seeing a lot of people, because it's a novelty right now, I've been seeing a lot of people talk about, oh, I finally cleaned out this closet, or I, finally did this or that, or I'm enjoying peace. I'm enjoying not being very busy. And that's very true. I've experienced it as well. Even though I work from home and I'm quite an introvert in a lot of ways, I have experienced it as well. So let's talk about what are the different ways that isolation can be very healing, because it can actually also be incredibly horrible. So there's a lot of negatives that can happen with isolation, okay? If you are anxious or depressed and in isolation, that normally creates more of a heightened awareness of what you're struggling with, okay? And the other thing to think about is that if you think about solitary confinement in a jail, so if you're traditionally, not that you personally, but if anyone or someone is traditionally in a jail cell, you're still interacting with people. And it's only when you are at the ultimate punishment that you are in solitary confinement. And solitary confinement was something early on that was used to punish people, and they were just kind of set away by themselves and put in a space that did not have windows, had nothing at all, and it was overwhelming for them. I don't necessarily think that rehabilitated anyone, but it was what people did. And we still do it right now. So I believe that when we do it now in jails, it's pretty much assumed that that person is not able to be rehabilitated, is a danger to themselves and or others or both. And I mean, to a heightened sense of beyond the other people, relatively speaking, they're a lot more dangerous than the other people that are in jail. They can't interact. They can't even forge faux friendships. Okay. So solitary confinement and being isolated is, if you are experiencing something negative, it can heighten those negative qualities, experiences, situations, feelings. Okay. It's just really overwhelming to some people as well to just be quiet with themselves. You see a lot of people who are workaholics, or who, in addition to being maybe a workaholic, they are also maybe escaping a relationship issue or escaping something else. So not only are they maybe hyper focused in their work, but they have a lot of other stuff going on. So being isolated, if it's in the negative, can bring on health issues, and it can bring on autoimmune issues. I'm not saying it does all of the time, but it can. It can also, as well as heightening these other issues, it can bring on issues that you never even had. So there could be people right now that have never had anxiety that all of a sudden are having anxiety. And part of it is a feeling of being out of control, or a feeling of being in jail in your own home. Now, a lot of times when children first maybe go from a public school or any kind of a school, private school, whatever, and then go to homeschooling, there's a decompression period, because it's a lot different from interacting a lot. And it's not so much that they're interacting in school. In school, they're often and I don't mean this in a negative way, but institutionalized. It is an institution. And so they have to be quiet at certain times. There has to be some kind of order. And then when there's freedom, when they're home, they don't know how to react to that. They don't know how to behave without those boundaries. So when you have now, you're leaving maybe your workplace, or maybe you are now in school or at university at home, and maybe this is new for you, you might have that same level of, now what do I do with myself? How do I keep a specific schedule if it's not something where I'm clocking in at a certain time, and so forth. So you might be having even anxieties revolving around that. And that's something that no one's really talking about, which I don't know why, because it's such a big issue. I know that in the homeschooling community, it's a really big issue, because people don't understand that even any kind of transition in your schedule can be something very huge. Okay. Now let's talk about, though, the positives. What are the positives that come out of being in an isolated experience, even if it has to be sort of forced on us, like it is now for many people? I'm in a situation where it's more of self-isolating, where it's not being forced so much, but strongly encouraged. And I heed that advice. And there are some people that are actually in lockdown, quarantine. There are countries that are in lockdown. There are states in lockdown. There are some states that are just doing whatever they want right now. Got that too. So one of the benefits, and I wanted to write these down because I didn't want to forget any of them, is when you are in your isolation, it's not so much that you're lonely. If you can get out of the negative mindset or the anxious or depressed mindset, that's a loneliness feeling, but you're just alone, which is different than being lonely, of course. And you are then very aware of your own thoughts. You're very aware of the silence around you. You're very aware of the lack of busyness. And you might be distracting yourself by being online or watching shows or cleaning, and what you should be cleaning. But you should be doing all of these things right now, not not the being online and the watching shows, although that's okay too. But a lot of times there's still a lot of quietness that we don't necessarily think about. And having that quietness and that quietness of thought can feel overwhelming at first, kind of like meditation, where at first it doesn't really feel good and it can really bring up some stuff. But in general, it can be really serene and positive. Now, with that comes the second one, which is you start to, in that quietness, you start to imagine that now you are thinking about your own thoughts. You are analyzing them, so to say, analyzing them, perceiving them, observing your thoughts. And you're starting to not have the noise in the background of other people's opinions, or maybe a dirty look, or even an affirming look. Like all of a sudden, you are in your own space and it's comfortable for you because it's just about you. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter what anyone else's opinion is. And this could be the first time in your life, maybe, that you have felt that. Some people are really uncomfortable with that. Other people are just like, wow, this is amazing. So it's beautiful when you can have that, okay? Now, the other aspect to go in and think about is that, and let me just look here because I want to make sure that I have these in order because, I don't know if I want to do this in this order, but I'm going to go for it. So in thinking your own thoughts without opinions or anything in the external, that means you have a little bit more clarity. And with that clarity comes the idea that we don't have to be busy and bored. We can just be. That's huge for a lot of people because most people think that you're either busy or doing something, or I'm relaxing, or I'm this. There's always something going on, or you're bored. And really, boredom is an inability to be comfortable in your own space, in your own body, right as you are. So I want you to think more about, isn't it great to realize that you're not really in boredom, that you're just being, okay? And with that being comes a stronger sense of what you like. Your authentic self becomes very much heightened. Now, if you were taught very young, or even very recently, if you were with a narcissist, that your authentic self is not doable, that your authentic self is not acceptable, then you perhaps are going to feel very uncomfortable with your authentic self. And so what I want you to think about here is, if you're feeling uncomfortable with your authentic self, dive a little deeper. You're going to have plenty of time to do that. So dive deeper. What is it about my authentic self that I'm not comfortable with? What is it about what I need to dive into to get to that place? Because, right now we're avoiding the virus. We're not avoiding other people. We're avoiding the virus. And so in this, and you might be actually with people that are toxic for you right now. You might be in quarantine or isolating with the people that actually have hurt you to make you feel like you're not good enough. And maybe as I'm saying some of this, you're thinking, okay, that's great, but it's really kind of still noisy here. I'm still getting the negativity and so forth. And that might be, but you're still getting more self-isolation than you would have normally. Because now, if your coping strategy before with these people was to be very busy or to do something, now all of a sudden that's not happening. All of a sudden now you are very aware of what you don't like. You're very aware of, on a very deeper level. Like, you knew if they were toxic to you, you knew that. Or if they're wonderful for you, you knew that. But now everything is more heightened. You might appreciate people more that are in your life. You might realize that some people just should not be in your life. This might be a time for many people where you look at the person that you've been living with and you go, wow, life is too short. I shouldn't be doing this. Like, what if I get the virus and something happens? Is this my end? So when you are faced with a crisis or a trauma or a decision like this, it forces you to get into that place that is very truthful and authentic for yourself. Now, I want to give you a quick little exercise, okay? And we're going to be talking about just your inner voice and your outer voice. Now, let's rub our hands together, get some nice and warmth going on here. Get into a prayer position if you like. And the exercise is going to be focusing on just, what is it about your inner voice that needs to be expressed? What is happening with this isolation? And for some of us, it's really early in this isolation. What is it about this quietness, this silence, that you are starting to learn about yourself. And just focus on breathing and an exhale. And just keep that going, okay? And as you're focusing, you can keep your hands in prayer if you like. And as you're focusing on that breathing and listening to your inner self and learning about who you really are. And if you feel really confused by this right now, of who you are and your authentic voice and all of that, that's good, because it means that you're at that place where you need to get there. And if you already understand what I'm talking about, go deeper, okay? Because your inner voice is that self that is a conglomeration of everything that you've been. So it's the 2-year-old you, it's the 5-year-old you, it's the 8-year-old you, it's the 16-year-old you, the 20-year-old you. It's all of you, all of your experiences, and all of the environment that you took in and owned as yourself. Now, some of that's really negative, right? So if you were with somebody that was very narcissistic, whether it's covert or grandiose, or someone that was just toxic or malignant in some way, or someone who was really amazing and beautiful and wonderful to you and wonderful in general, a very good spirit, then these things come into your life and they might start to form how you feel about yourself. So now, with all of this quietness, are these things true about yourself? You know, are you really, let's just say you felt that your whole life that you did not amount to much. And maybe right now you're having potentially worries about finances. So if you're having concerns about finances or money in any way right now, or your relationship or your job, your career, whatever it might be that you're worried about, this might be triggering you thinking, see, I'm not good enough. I didn't save enough money. I don't have a strong enough relationship. I this, I that. So listen to your inner voice. What are the things that are going through your mind right now that are creating and driving how you feel about yourself, how you feel when you look in the mirror? Do you like who you see when you look in the mirror? Do you like your body? What are the habits and the types of things, the behaviors that have formed because of your environment? These are the things that come from within now. They were in your environment, they come in, and they are now who you think you are. So go to your inner voice and really touch into, who are you really? The person who has said negative things to you, whether it was childhood or whether it was yesterday or this morning, is this person so amazing that they have the right and the authority to tell you and to exert power and wisdom of who you are? Probably not. If you really look objectively and subjectively, you can step back and observe and sort of let the behaviors and the memories float by and realize that these are fractured people, because only a fractured person would intentionally hurt you, okay? So these are fractured people who, even by mistake, if they hurt you, there's some level of fracture, brokenness going on. You deserve so much more than that, okay? And these are their issues, not your issues. And I know it feels like they have been your issues for many years. But now in this silence, now your inner voice is talking to you more. And your inner voice is showing you that you are not that person, that you are an amazing human being, that you have more strength probably than the other person has that might have hurt you, or people, because in that, they only did it to push you down. You don't have to push someone down that's amazing, right? So even when people have been abusing children and everything else, it's because these children are so amazing and wonderful, and these horrible people can't handle that. And they're malignant as hell. So anyone that hurt you while you were a child, or even if it was this morning, that someone who you at one point have trusted, or that you should be able to trust, is betraying you and hurting you, you do not deserve that. So listen to your inner voice. Really listen to your inner voice, not their inner voices. Okay? Now, in this, with all of this quiet that happens, there's a silence. And we start to recognize how often we might speak to people, how often we might be rude to people without realizing it, how often we are actually very kind to people. And if we continue to focus on our outer voice, and what does it sound like? Is it coming from a really high-pitched, nervous, quick thing? Or is it coming from a low and tired and depressed place? Or is it somewhere in the middle where you've got this prana, this energy, and you also have this groundedness? So it's somewhere in the center. So as soon as you are starting to recognize your outer voice connecting with how you feel, and your outer voice and your inner voice need to connect. Now, they always have connected. You just maybe haven't realized it. Maybe you have. But this is for those of you who did not always recognize it. So anyway, listen to your inner voice. Listen to your outer voice. Meditate on both. So that's why I had you in prayer, and you might still be in prayer, that you're just focusing on breathing into the inner voice, outer voice, and creating that marriage, that meshing of both. So what I want you to do right now is I want you just to focus on unplugging. Even though you are in isolation, you might be working online, most of you are. You might be working online, you might be studying online, and then in between, you might be on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, quite a bit. I know I am. And so one thing that you can do is you can unplug a little bit from that. You can actually put your phone to the side. Don't have your phone with you all of the time. I mean, even if it's with you, you can just have it on vibrate over there somewhere, okay? You don't even have to read a book or look at a show. You can just sort of be. Just see what it's like to isolate even more. And the reason for this is, then when you go back to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, or wherever it is that you hang out most online or visit a lot online, forums, whatever it is, when you go back to that, it's a little bit richer of an experience. But if you're there all the time, it can create anxiety. So if it bothers you, if scrolling bothers you on any of these social platforms, you need to take a step back, because that's not really, not only is it not 100% isolating, but it's not 100% connection either. It's somewhere in this very gray area. And I want you to be able to have a kind of an escape from all of the noise. Okay. So on that note, I have another video for you, and we're going to talk more about handling isolation and anxiety in the next week. And we're also going to be talking about that narcissist who has made you feel the way you're feeling.